Welcome to the Clean Library Podcast, where content meets conscience. We believe there are millions of you readers out there desperately searching for a better way to find clean content. Each episode, we will introduce you to a new author of clean books, giving you, your family, and your friends clean options.
Hello, I'm Marcus Williams, and I'm here with co-host Brock Morris, and today we have special guest author Laura M. Drake. Laura is the youngest of 5 children and grew up in Arkansas. She earned a degree in elementary education at BYU. She worked as a teacher until she discovered a love of writing, and she bases almost every story on dreams or nightmares. She dabbles in multiple genres, but always likes to keep things clean, so her mom can read her books. When she isn't writing, she loves ultimate frisbee, budgeting, reading, board games, friends, and family, but mostly frisbee. She belongs to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and one of her favorite quotes is, "You'll never know what you can do until you try." She has a Halloween cozy mystery coming out in October and its sequel coming out in December. Welcome, Laura. We're so glad to have you on the show.
So glad to be here. Thanks, Marcus and Brock.
Yeah. So before we jump into getting to know you, we're going to read your 2 truths and a lie. And we'll introduce you to Steve here. He's our scorekeeper for 2 truths and a lie. So we've actually been at this score for quite a while now. Either we both were wrong or we both were right, or so Brock's in the lead, but staying steady. So let's see if we can break through today and get some momentum going.
That's cute.
So let me go ahead and read those, and we'll see if we can figure them out while we're talking. Number 1, Laura started writing while living in Tokyo, Japan. 2, Laura has visited all 7 continents. And 3, Laura's dream is to have a story adapted into a manga or anime. All right.
Sounds to see if cool. We can suss that out.
Yeah.
You might be able to hit that first one a little harder than I can, Marcus, to see.
That's the hope, because I lived just south of Tokyo for a while, so I'd love to. But just because she lived there doesn't mean that's where she started writing.
Correct. That's true.
So we'll still have to figure that out. All right. So why don't you just get started by telling us, you were teaching, you love reading. How did you actually decide, like, what was that moment? Was there a moment in time where you said, I'm going to write a book?
I think that I've always been a huge reader. Obviously, I feel like a lot of writers, everyone starts that way. And then I was kind of dabbling in writing in high school, and I started writing a book with my roommates in Utah. Actually, there's 4 of us. I just moved out, but we live together and we're all single. And we started writing this book about being single and how, just essentially what it's like. And so I kind of did that. But then one day I had this dream. It was actually a nightmare. And I woke up and I was like, oh man, that is like such a crazy story. And so I just kind of like wrote a short story about the, not like a scary story. It wasn't a short story, it was a novella about it. And then I did that and I shared it with people and got some feedback. And I didn't know anything. Like I was still getting my dialogue tags and my action beats. Like I didn't know I punctuate, like, like where to put commas. I was terrible at writing at this point. But I loved it so much when I just heard people's feedback, like, oh, that was so fun, or like, I love this story, or like whatever it was. And it got me hooked on writing. And then I just haven't stopped ever since that story.
Cool. So do you, like, I can never remember my dreams. So do you like have a notebook like right by your bed? You write them down as soon as you wake up?
I have like on my phone, I have a little notes tab and I call them my book dreams. And sometimes I just wake up and I'm like, that was a book dream. Like it just was super cool. And like I would just actually last summer, 2 summers ago, I can't remember. I think it was last summer. I woke up and I was like, that was a cool book dream. So like that morning I just sat down and I went ahead and plotted it out. I'm really big into Save the Cat beat sheet. So I like plotted it all out to make sure I like knew what was going on. And then I wrote that summer, and I actually just sold that book to a writing, like a small press, and they're going to publish it. And so I was like, oh, look, like the book dreams are coming to fruition, like, which it's like different, when you self-publish and then somebody else is like, I want that story. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that, but before we go forward, tell for people who don't know, tell us about the beat sheet that you mentioned.
Oh, the Save the Cat. So it's pretty much just kind of a story structure, a novel and story structure, and it tells you kind of like around this point in the novel, these things need to happen to kind of keep the pacing up and to keep your reader engaged and to make sure there are enough highs and lows and to make sure your protagonist is going through enough character growth and stuff like that. And like a lot of people don't like it because they feel like it's telling them what to do and like how to write and it's too formulaic. But I actually love the structure and I feel like there's still plenty of ways to surprise your reader with plot twists, even following
Hmm.
the beat sheet, and it's a great
Yeah,
way, yeah, to keep pacing up, which I feel like is a huge problem for a lot of writers, a lot of new
yeah.
writers.
So is it specific to certain genres and their tropes, or does it work for
No,
any
it's pretty
genre?
much anything. Well, there's original like a Save the Cat book, which was about screenplays and movies, and he like uses all these movie references. And then another girl, I think it was Jessica Brody, she wrote Save the Cat uh, for a novel or something. It's about novel writing, and it's pretty much any genre. It's just like a basic kind of catch-all that you can do. It's super great, but yeah, it's definitely not like the end all be all. There are a lot of really great writing craft books out there, but this is one that
Yeah.
I do use a lot. Like I combine that and the romancing the beat sheet together a lot to like make sure my romance and my plot fit together well.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you write in multiple genres, or dabble, I guess was your word. So are those like, do you consider each book multiple genres, or do you have like a specific fantasy book and a specific romance book, or are you kind of
I'd
combining
say
things in
that
one book?
all of my books have romance as a subplot, but I've never written like a romance book. But like my
Okay.
very first trilogy was like YA Magical Academy. It's very like Harry Potter meets Avatar The Last Airbender is what I tell people. So it's
Okay.
very fantasy and YA. And then the next series, I because I love Japan, I did Japanese ghost stories. So I just totally shifted genres and did four Japanese ghost stories. And then the next book I did a standalone and it's like not YA. I mean, it's still clean, but it's like the protagonist is like 30 and I guess paranormal is like probably the best. It's like she's in this, yeah, it's a problem that I can't even figure out a good way to describe it. Pretty much she's in a new world where she's dead, but she's like between
Mhm.
life and death and she can either pass on or like she has to collect memories of her life to try and go back to her life. So the whole
Yeah.
book takes place in this like alternate world. Um, so that
Cool.
was a new genre again, and then the steampunk one is the one I told you guys about that I'm publishing with that company, and it's like steampunk time travel murder mystery. And then I wrote the two cozy murder mysteries that are coming out this year, and now I'm writing vampire books. So they're just not related at all.
Yeah. So you really are dabbling in a lot of genres. So do you find it just the whole system of genres to be limiting?
No, I think they're great for building an audience, which I'm terrible at. I'm always like, perfect, you love this book, and then I switch and they're like, I don't love that genre. And I'm like, dang it, why did I do that? But I just write that way because every single one of those books was based on a dream that I had. And so I was
Okay.
like the first magic book, I was like, oh, cool. And the Japanese books, the first one was a nightmare. And then, so that's why I jump around so much, is I'm just following where my dreams go. But it's definitely not the best marketing move, which I'm learning.
Well, according to Ebenezer Scrooge, that dream could just be what a piece of cheese.
Yeah.
You never know what's causing those dreams. Um, in the in the Japanese one, did you use actual Japanese folklore characters, or
hmm
just
So
completely made up?
it starts out with a girl in America. She like moves to the small town and she meets this boy. He's half Japanese and his mom's from Japan. And it's the essentially it's about she moves into a haunted house and it's haunted by a vengeful spirit called Oiwa, which is famous in Japanese literature, like a
Hmm.
folk
Yeah.
tale. And then in book two, they go to Japan and she meets another each book has a different Japanese ghost from folk tales. And then like an overarching story that spans the four of them. But that was super fun because obviously I love Japan, so I like got to
Yeah.
work on all these little cultural bits and like yeah, like when they went to Japan, I was like having them do all these things that I'd like done during my time there. So that was very fun for me.
Yeah, that's cool.
I don't know if you know this since you
Go ahead.
sorry, I was saying since you lived in Japan, I'm guessing you heard about the NHK man.
Yeah, but
So
explain it for those who don't know or
So the NHK man is like it's like the Japan broadcasting people. They come to your door and they try and make you like pay for essentially for like having a TV in your house is what
right.
it boils down to. Um, and it's like if you go onto websites like foreigner websites or like Facebook groups, so it's like, oh, like don't answer your door for the NHK man. Like pretend like you're not home. Just like avoid him. It's like so anyway, all of the other three of my stories are based on like actual urban legends, but for the second one, I like tweaked the NHK man and I made it the NKH man, like never know how he's going to show up at your door. And so
Oh,
he was the
cool.
urban legend for book two, because I just thought it was funny from my time actually living there. I was like, that is like a real urban legend, like horror story, because they just come all the time to your house.
That's funny. I used the and my pronunciation isn't very good, but the Tengu. I used that
Okay.
character in one of mine, the kind of the little mischievous demon. So that was a lot of fun just researching. They have so many great um, mythical characters and these fables, and there's so much there
Mm-hmm.
in Japanese lore that it was a lot of fun to try to bring those characters to life. And uh, there's different dragons, there's different elves, dwarfs, demons, all these little things. So that, there's so much material there.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's really cool.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Is there
So
one of those? Is there one of those genres that you enjoy writing more than others, or have you found them just unique in their own way, and you just continue to go where the dreams take you?
Um, Essentially, I've continued to go where the dreams take me, but in an effort to be more marketable, I am trying to write 7 books in this vampire series and like release them every 3 months to build an audience for that. But already I'm like itching to go start. Like I've already had a couple. Like it's hard because my book dreams are way faster than my writing abilities. So I've got this
right.
huge, I call it my TBW list, which is my to be written, and it's way longer than I have time for. So um I'm trying to be smart since I'm self-publishing and do like a bunch of books in one, but I'm really excited to move on to the next project.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I just was talking to someone who'd read my latest book yesterday, and he said, "Is there a sequel?" And I don't know. Like that story hasn't come to me yet, so maybe not. You know, like I mean, uh, so with the dreams, like what would you do if you had a cowboy dream one night? Would you write a western?
uh, I mean, possibly if it felt like a book, like not every dream is a book dream. You know, like
Okay.
you can tell when you wake up, you're like, that was just super epic, or like that is the coolest story, or like whatever it is. Um, but I don't think I've ever had a cowboy dream in my life, but even if I did, I'm not sure that I'd wake up and be like, that was a story." But there actually
Yeah, and I'm
is a Laura
go
M.
ahead.
Drake. Sorry, there's a Laura Drake that writes cowboy romance books, and she's the reason that I use my middle initial as my author name because I was like, I
Right.
don't write romance like cowboy romance books. Well, that's
That's
funny that
funny.
you said that.
Not yeah, not even knowing that that was the example I picked. That's pretty funny.
I'm super fascinated by this because just like Marcus, I don't ever remember my dreams. And even when I do, they don't have anywhere near enough detail to even outline some sort of story too. So do you actually get like the just the concept, or do you get more detail about the story? It gives you an outline, or do you have to go create that after and you just have a simple
I
concept?
just have a concept really. Like normally, like the whole dream doesn't stick with me, but like I distinctly remember the first time I did it was that Japanese ghost story. And I just chose Japanese because I like love Japan. But like um I was asleep in bed and I just like it was one of those like almost waking nightmares where I just like suddenly pictured the wall like collapsing into this black hole and this creepy like ghost reaching out and like pulling me into the blackness. And I like scared myself awake. And I was like, that was terrifying, but also pretty fun. So then it like expanded to that where it was like a ghost haunting me. And then that turned into a scene in the book where they're like in the attic and the floor collapses and she's stuck in the dark and the ghost is like dragging her through the darkness. And like the rest of the story just like the characters kind of come alive once I have like as I start thinking of the scene, the characters come to life as I write. So it's really just based off of scenes.
God, it's
Yeah.
fascinating. And then your just inherent creativity takes over, and then you write. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty
So
fun.
as you continue the story, describe to us how your characters talk to you. And that's
Um,
always interesting to me.
yeah, I don't feel like I'm one of those authors who, well, some I feel like some authors are like, oh, the characters just like will not shut up in my head, like they're always talking to me
Uh-huh.
and like telling me, but that is not me. I feel like what happens is I'm very like type A OCD, like plotted out, and I'm like, here's what's going on in each of these chapters. And then even still, sometimes the story, like I'll just be writing, and then I'm like, oh, like I did not see that coming. Like it wasn't in the outline. I don't know where that came from. Like I feel like that's kind of how they influence it. It's more like they'll behave in ways that I wasn't expecting, or I'll like find things out
Yeah.
about them. Like I distinctly remember when I was writing my magic book. And one day I was at work and I was typing. I was like, "Oh my gosh, is this character's father?" That I had like no idea when I started, but I just like realized it as I was getting to know them. So that's I feel like that's how it is for me. I just get to know them as I write, and then on the second like draft, I can fine tune it a lot more because I know them better.
Hmm. So going back to your this small press, how did all that come to be? Did they reach out to you and they found you, or did you send them query letters, or
I
how did that work?
actually what happened was I just submitted to a writing contest and
Hmm.
it was about 450 people, and then at the end of the day, um, for three of us won like a first place prize. Don't ask me how that math works, but and we all got like a $3,000 advance for royalties, and then they're publishing the stories just from like running the contest.
Oh,
So
wow. Very cool. So have you started that experience with them, or are you at the very beginning?
I'm at the very beginning. I just found out on Independence Day that I won one of the prizes. Well, I found out a little before that, but they announced it on Independence Day, and then um yeah, it's like I don't really know what is going to happen, but like we've talked about working. I know it's hard because for this book, well, it's actually really funny. I sent this book to a developmental editor while it was like in the middle of the contest, like not really assuming that I was going to win, because I was like, oh, I have all these
Yeah.
revisions I need to do after. And the developmental editor got back to me and he's like, okay, I think you could easily split this into two books. Like you've got so much here that you could really dig into. And that kind of got my, the gears in motion. So I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I should split it up and I can have a trilogy instead of the duology I'd originally planned. And but then it won, and now I'm like, well, wait, do I just like anyway? It's totally thrown me off because I've never not been in control before, and I'm like, should I
Right.
ask them if they want me to split it up and like get because they talked about buying the sequel possibly too. So I'm like, well, do they want more books or do they want less books? And anyway, it's very interesting because I have no idea.
Yeah, that will be interesting to see how that plays out and how much creative control and freedom they allow you to have and everything. Because I mean, that's one of the things when we talk to people about their choice, whether they want to indie publish or traditionally publish. Um, Creative control is a lot of times a big factor in that decision. So the
Yeah,
fact that you've been self-published and now you're going to have this traditional experience will be interesting to see how you feel about it.
I think it makes it easier. Like a lot of people think of their books as their babies, but I am finishing book 19 right now, and they're not all out. But I think at that point, I'm like, okay, just get out the door. Like, I'm not as attached to them anymore. So I feel like it's easier to just like sell it off to somebody and be like, okay, let's do what we need to do with this and move on. But some people are very much like, I do not want to like take this in a direction I don't want to go. And for me, I'm like,
Hmm.
it's whatever. Like, I'm fine. As long as it's inherently the same story, I don't really care.
Okay. And was there a point, maybe first book, second, third, fourth, where was that point where you got to that kind of realization that it's not as big a deal?
That's a great question. I don't know because I never really considered traditional. Like I was self-publishing from the get-go. So I was never like, oh, like this has to be exactly. It was just more like impatience. I'm a pretty fast writer. Like I mean, I guess it's comparative. In 5 years, I've written about almost 20 books. So, but
Yeah.
they're not all out. So it's like I think part of it, like I was definitely pickier and like more scared with my first story. And like I'm in a writing group and they're all really great, but some of the girls have been working on the same story for like years, which I totally get because they want to do traditional. But I cannot hold on to a story for that long. Like I get so tired
Hmm.
of it and I'm like, I just get it out the door. Like it's as good as it's gonna be, and I'll make sure the next one's even better. Like as long as it's good enough that my readers enjoy it and it like makes them love my work, that's good enough for me as long as I'm constantly growing. But I can tell like some of their like when I read some of their first chapters and like every sentence is like poetry and I'm like, okay, that's amazing, but I cannot spend this long on a book. I'm not. I think part of it's just my personality. Like I'm not the kind I think to baby things like that. I'm very like
Yeah.
they call me the strict aunt in my family, if that gives you any indication. So I'm that way with my books too, I guess.
Well, and I think you can get into a cycle of perfection paralysis, and never put your book out. If you're trying to write your first book, you're trying to write a masterpiece, you'll never finish your first book and thus never write a masterpiece. You
Right.
have to publish in order to get feedback and to get better and to build an audience. And
Hmm.
yeah,
I think
so
it is
I
hard
think
if you're like looking for traditional because you only have like one chance to grab them with like your first chapter or your first 5 pages, or like it's a lot of pressure. And I think I'm too lazy to wait for that sort of timeline. And I'm just like, I just don't have it in me to make something that perfect. Like, I can't.
yeah. Well, and if you think back to a lot of the classics, the first chapters are not like that. Whole concept of you have to grab attention in the first chapter wasn't a thing until
Hmm.
recently. And I don't know if it's the internet or the TikTok generation or I don't know, but if you read some of those classics, you have to read 50, 60, 70 pages before the story really takes off and gets interesting. And yet they're classics. So why do we think now we have to put all of the action in chapter one? Are
But I think
people
you like hit the nail on the head. It's because we have a lot more competition for entertainment than people did like 100 years ago. Like what did they have to do? Like they walked around and visited their neighbors and did calling cards and like embroidered and read books. Like they had books. But now we have TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and like endless scrolling and like you've got like even with like advertisement, like you've got what, 3 seconds, half a second, I don't know what it is to like grab people with your marketing. So it's
hmm
like a lot stiffer competition. So it makes sense to me that like it doesn't work the same, but that doesn't mean that I like it. But I also
right.
can't say that I'm immune. Like if I am not pulled in by a chapter or two or three, then I don't always finish a book, like I'm the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And but then on the other hand, like the most popular podcast in the world is long form. And it's
Yeah.
the 3 4 hour episodes. So it's like this weird thing. And yeah, I think sometimes we just have to recognize that some stories are going to start off with a bang and some aren't, and it depends on the story.
And I do think you can tell kind of by the writing in general, like, like even if maybe the action hasn't pulled you in, a lot of writing can pull you in even without it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So you talked about the um, kind of the issues when you're doing multiple genres with building a base and an audience and marketing and stuff. So do you think you've cracked the marketing conundrum, or are you still working on that?
I have 0% cracked it. Actually, I have like -% cracked it. Like, marketing is my fatal flaw as a writer. I'm always like, okay, like I could learn marketing or I could just write the next book. And I keep doing that, but turns out it's not getting me anywhere except for a decent backlist. So that is
Yeah.
my goal for 2024 and like 2025. Actually, I've been hearing a lot. Like I went to Storymakers. Do you guys ever go to Storymakers?
We know about, but we haven't been.
It's really
I'd like
cool.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of great classes and lots of great connections. So I went, and while I was volunteering at a table, I met this girl. So she told me about this series that she's in with a bunch of authors. And I guess to sum it up, like each of them wrote as many books as they wanted. And I think she did 20 of the 60 or like something like that, but the others wrote. And so you have so many authors in it, and they were able to rapid release because they're novellas. So it was like every week or every 2 weeks, they were putting out a book, which is huge for Amazon. And
Mm-hmm.
because they had so many authors involved, they had lots of like audiences that they could reach for the marketing. And she said that series just did so well. So that got me thinking. And now my friends and I, and a bunch of people in my critique group, there's, I think, 5 of us for now. We might recruit some people later, but like we're all doing some novellas, these like cozy mystery novellas that we're going to be releasing in 2025. And I think that'll actually be really huge for marketing, but it's still it is not the same as learning how to do ads and like actually utilizing a reader magnet and an email list and all of that. So I'm still working on that stuff, but I'm excited.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a business, and we have to look at it as a business if you really want to grow as an author. And I think that's the part of self-publishing that I think is the most difficult, is first of all recognizing that you don't just get to write. You have to actually budget time to the marketing, a budget time to the networking, a budget, and all these things that you may not want to do
Yes, I think
are
100%.
And I would say, I mean, on the related marketing note, you have some beautiful cover art on your book. So I was just looking at everything out there, and I think that is some percentage. I don't know what you want to call it. So I would say you've cracked the code on some of it because it's pretty amazing. I'd love to hear. Did you do that, or how did you get the cover art? Or
No,
uh,
I am
yeah,
not artistic in that way. But thank you. I actually love, I've worked with a handful of cover designers. The same person who did my magic books did the Till Life Do Us Part, which has this hourglass on the front. And then my Japanese books was a different one. And then I've hired somebody else to do my cozy mysteries and somebody else for the other. Anyway, so I've different experiences working with people, but I always hire someone, and it's been like a nice back and forth. I even got like my first vampire book cover. Actually, I have the first three done, and yeah, I've had really great experiences working with everybody, and they've been all like really receptive for feedback, and I do feel like they've done a good job of giving me covers that are on genre, which is super important. You're right, for
yeah,
marketing, but it's like having a good cover and a good blurb isn't enough to get people to your page, and I feel like that's
right,
where I'm lacking. Is like I'm
yeah,
not driving any traffic to my site.
yeah. And it's a very word of mouth business too, but you have to have people read it first in order for the word of mouth to take off.
Right, right. So I'm really
It's like a
hopeful that those like we're going to be releasing hopefully 30 books in that series like every 2 weeks. I'm hoping that that will send people to my backlist, and that the 7 vampire books will like draw a huge base, and like while they're waiting for the other ones, hopefully that will do more. So even saying it out loud, I'm like, I'm still not focusing on marketing, like advertisement and stuff, but I am trying.
yeah. So in your bio, you talked about how you've decided to keep your books clean so that your mom can read them, which is actually a very common response. Your mom or your grandma or something. But um, have you ever, as you're writing, um, maybe I don't know if temptation is the right word, but have you ever felt like you needed to add things into it to and had and struggled with keeping them clean?
No, because I actually feel very uncomfortable writing romance scenes. So even like kissing scenes, I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'll put this in now. And like, hopefully, this isn't as cringy for the reader as it is for me. And so,
Hmm.
no, I've never been tempted. And yeah, like, nope, 0%. And I'm also a huge believer, like, that you don't need spice to make a book great. Like, so many people love steamy books, but I'm like, you can have so many great books without any of that. And I just feel like there are still plenty of clean books, if we're counting clean as like no steam. Or sorry, I should say, I don't really know. My friends say steam and spice are different. I'd say maybe I have some steam in my books, but I have no spice. Like, it never goes past
Okay.
kissing. But I guess it kind of depends on how much like romantic tension you're building. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like different ways of talking about it. But um I don't actually remember what I was saying. But I'm just convinced that you can have like it's getting harder to find books that don't have any spice and
Yeah.
that are like popular. And so that's kind of my goal is to just have books that anybody could recommend to anybody. Like a steamy reader could still enjoy it if the plot's good enough, but a clean reader is not going to read a book with spice. And so then they would just like I'm hoping to hit both readerships um just by having good plot and good writing.
So I think the first thing we think of when we think of clean is romance. And there's a lot, just like you said, there's a lot of definitions out there: steam, spice, a lot of variations. And uh, but what about um,
Swearing.
language? Yeah, language, violence, all of the other things that people might also be. I don't know.
Um I do have like if in books, if I ever have them swear, I usually do it as like a dialogue tag, like he swore or something, or like a beat, I mean, and just like
Yeah,
say that he did it without showing it. Or if I like have built my own world, then I just make up swear words for them to use so then they can swear to their heart's content and
yeah,
would not offend my mother. But and I feel like it's the same for violence. Like I do have like, like I have a murder mystery, but it's not like you're showing the murder. It's like a lot of after the fact stuff or like a lot of
right.
telling instead of showing when it comes to violence for the most part. I don't feel like there's anything that I would be worried about, like, yeah, anyone reading, except for the scary ones. Like my nephews and nieces aren't allowed to read those yet because my sister said they're too scary for them. So,
Yeah.
but like, yeah, for clean wise, I try to keep it in all aspects of the word clean.
So do you use that as part of your marketing or advertising? Do you like
Yes,
lean into that clean?
I try to. Um, Again, it's like hard. Even like on my website, I have them like broken up by tabs for genres for my books, and one of them is like horror suspense. And I feel like horror, like people like sometimes people are like horror, just they assume it's kind of going to be more like gritty almost, but it's
Hmm.
not. But it's like also what else are you supposed to call it? Like clean horror, I guess. Like what it, I don't know. It is tricky, but I do try to emphasize that.
Yeah, and I think it's especially in the horror genre, it's so easy to get graphic or gratuitous because there are so many people that do that. Um, I think it's actually it requires more skill to make something scary without adding that all the
Yeah. I do
gratuitous.
remember I feel like that's the benefit actually of jumping genres is I feel like you learn a lot of writing skills. Like writing that horror series, I feel like upped my writing ability for suspense scenes that are in every other book. Like every book has suspense, and I feel like I'm a
Right.
little bit better at it now because I had so much practice. But I do remember after I wrote, like when I was writing book 4, I was like, I am done with horror for quite a while. Like I feel like how many ways can I show somebody being scared? I'm done with it.
And I
So,
think you made a great point earlier that it does flow much easier from an audience standpoint and a fan standpoint in one direction, right? It's pretty unidirectional that way, where those who like to read clean material really aren't going to ever delve into the stuff that's more spicy, right? But everyone can enjoy a well written, clean book, and I think there's power in that.
especially if they know there's no spice, because otherwise they'll like blast you with reviews. But if like going into it they know it's a clean story and they still love it, then you're like golden, hopefully.
Yeah. So do you put a content, I don't know, not warning, but do you describe what it is that it's clean in your blurb, or how do you get that word out?
Um, no, I don't have anything in the blurb. My website talks about it. Sometimes I'll like talk about it in my newsletter, just um like little reminders, and then like word of mouth. Yeah, like I have a lot of people, um even like from my church, that will like read my stuff, and I'm like, okay, yeah, perfect. It's like totally clean. So like you can read it, your granddaughter can read it, like your neighbor can read it.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't have anything on the books themselves, which maybe is a missed opportunity, but I'm also not really sure where to put it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've thought about just doing it not on the book, but like in the description, like on Amazon,
Yeah, that's a good
a
idea.
just a informational paragraph about the content. It contains this level of it. Um, because one of the things that we've found as we've talked to different authors is it's very difficult to find if you just run across a book, say on Amazon. It's really hard to find what the content level, the cleanliness level of the book is, even in the reviews, because it can be so subjective, and you'll have some people will mention it, some people won't,
Right.
and some people will just, if they didn't like the content, they'll just give it a star and not tell us why. So it's without a rating system out there, it's so hard to know unless you go to that author's website or
We need like an
word of
IMDb
mouth.
for books, like a
I know.
parent's guide. That's actually super interesting. I've never really thought about that, but that is very interesting.
I, Brock, there we go. Let's
I
do it.
like it. I like it. But I totally agree. I mean, that's one of the things that in all other media realms we have the ability to search. We have these resources at hand, and it really is. It's never caught on. I know there's other sites and groups have tried to build something, but it really hasn't caught on the same way. So yeah, there's a code to crack there, Marcus. We're going to get on that.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So, is there something your current self would tell your past self starting out in the writing journey? Any, you know, advice you would have given yourself?
I would have told myself to join a critique group right off the bat. I
Okay.
was quite a few books in before I joined this group. I think I'd already written the whole Magic series and all of the Japanese series before met this group, and they just make everything that goes through them is so much better because of the feedback. Like we do weekly submissions and we do like beta reading, and then we have a weekly Zoom and we can talk about it, and
Hmm.
it's phenomenal. The only drawback is that I can only submit like maybe 2 chapters a week, which is great for people that are slower writers or like doing
Right.
traditional. But for me, I'm like trying to do 2 or 3 books a year, and I'm like, I can't get them all through, and then I don't know which ones to do, and it's really hard because I'm like, everything's better when it goes through. So I joined a second critique group because I was like, what do I do?
So, is there any advice you would give to authors about finding the right critique group for them?
Um, I don't know. I see a lot of people like there are a lot of Facebook groups on writing. Like I see the Writing Gals group is really huge, and there's even like a Writing Gals critique group, and you can like post in there looking for groups to start. But I don't know if there's any really one fit or one right way. Like some people I heard do like for their meeting, they'll get together once a week and they just do like a blind read of each other's stuff, and like they'll get through however many pages and everyone will stop and like give feedback as they read. Some people read it ahead of time and leave comments. Like there's so many ways to do it, and like however frequently you meet, that I don't really know that there is like finding the perfect fit for you necessarily, like
Hmm.
a cheat to do that. I think you just have to go join a group, and then if you're a good fit, you stay, and if not, just look for another one, because there are always people looking for groups, and I feel like are always groups looking for people.
Yeah, little trial and error, and just put yourself out there.
Yeah.
I like that. So, are there any other clean authors out there that you would recommend to our listeners?
Um, that one's tricky too because I feel like a lot of authors start clean and then they end up adding spice in like later books in the series. Like, yeah. And there are a lot
Yeah.
of girls in my critique group that I would love to recommend, but a lot of them haven't published yet. Um, my friend I think it's J.A. Curtis is her clean YA.
Mm-hmm.
She did like a fairy series,
Okay.
which is clean. So I would recommend that. I like her writing a lot. She's shifting more with a different pen name to spicy stuff, but her clean stuff is great for clean readers. And then like well-known authors, who would it be? I guess the easiest one is Brandon Sanderson. I feel like comes to mind.
Yeah.
Um,
And he's a great example of someone who, like, marketplace wise, to show that there is a market. You can't
right,
argue with his success.
right. Like he has huge fandom, so many books. Like, what did it was it 42 million that his Kickstarter
Yeah, it
earned?
was something like it was
Yeah, it was
crazy.
insane. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
awesome.
so crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, like that gives me, not that I'm comparing myself in any way but it gives me hope that like there is a market. There are people willing to pay money to get clean material.
Right. Yes, it is very encouraging.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, we're out of time. This has been a lot of fun. So we need to jump back to your two truths and a lie and see if we can figure those out. So I'm going to remind everybody. Number one was you started writing while living in Tokyo. 2, you have visited all 7 continents. And 3, your dream is to have a story adapted into manga or anime. So Brock, what do you think?
You let me go first. All right. So I think based on the conversation, we actually got into a fair amount that gives us a little bit more background here. So I'm going to say that number 2 is the lie, that you've been to several continents, but maybe not all 7. And there's such a rich background in Japan that I think both 1 and 3 could be true. So I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, I'm going to have to
Sorry.
agree.
I
No,
felt like you were going to go that way.
yeah. Oh, so you're trying to preempt me there?
Yeah. I was hoping I was going to take you off the scent there, but maybe not.
Well, I'm going to go with number 2 as well. I mean, it's possible, and like not definitive, but I think out of what we know, that's the best guess for the lie.
That is a lie. I've been to several, but not all of them. But that is the goal, to visit all of them.
All right.
Good job, you guys. Sorry I couldn't break your stalemate there.
Hey, it's better than Brock going further ahead in my book. So.
Well, and hopefully you'll have some dreams that take place in some of the other continents you haven't visited, and then you'll have to go for research purposes, right?
That's a
Right.
great point.
A tax-deductible trip to Antarctica needs to happen.
Meditate on that before you go to sleep, and then see if you can
Like, really turn the AC down and like kind of turn this into a little ice cave while I sleep.
Yeah.
See if I get some.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
I like
There
it.
you go. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It was a pleasure. We had a great time. It was a very fascinating conversation, so we really appreciate it. And for everyone out there listening or watching, please subscribe, follow, share. And like we said, word of mouth is really important in the world of books. So please tell your friends about it. Talk to your family and friends and let them know there's a resource here where they can come and meet new authors of clean material, and they can find new books that they're comfortable reading and that they're comfortable having their mom read. So thank you so much, and we will catch you next time on the Clean Library Podcast.